you increase your rents to 2261 or 81? Did I catch that correctly?
2280. We started at 1951 and we increased to 2280. Yes.
Great. And what does your PITI look like on that property now?
So my PITI, we just got adjusted escrow analysis. Right now it's at 2085.
Got it.
But
so you're still
I will say I'm still able to cash flow. But again, that house wasn't meant to be a rental. That house was my primary house. My mom, number one, it was time to leave mom's house. And number two, that house was close to my job and I could make my payments with my disability check. So this is all happenstance and I consider myself fortunate and blessed. But the cash flow to me is nothing to be amazing.
But I'm assuming your house appreciated over the last couple of years, right?
Now that it has.
Let's talk about that. What do you think it's worth? How much did you buy it for, and what do you think it's worth now?
Okay, so getting down to the nuts and bolts, I did use my VA loan, so I'm also in it for 0%, which I definitely feel like cash on cash return numbers are definitely, the smaller your denominator, the better. So 0% into the home. The home was originally listed at $254,000. We ended up closing at $245,000. This was in December of 2019. And right now, if I wanted to get it off my hands immediately, I think I could get $325,000. COVID, for what good and what bad, a lot of that is COVID appreciation. But again, this was my house. This wasn't me starting investing. I started investing in 2020. This just happened to be, as I kept learning and reading, I can use my VA loan more than once. Let's run it. So that's what we ended up doing.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today I first talked to Tomi about, almost like a month or two ago. And when he reached out and told me about his story, I was like, dude, you got to come on a podcast. You got to talk about your story. Learning about his career when he studied accounting, and then he moved to become an attorney, practicing law, still is today. And he's grown his portfolio. And the reason why I was so excited to bring Tomi onto the podcast is because I think there's just so many lessons from his story that we can all take away, right? You don't have to be an investor that focuses on, let's grow my portfolio all the way, max 100 single families right away. Tomi's a great example of how he had a desire to grow a portfolio, to build wealth, and he took action upon it. And he took every step, and every step informed him of what the next step was. So, Tomi, welcome to the show. How you doing today, man?
Man, Kent, I am so excited to be here. This is a little surreal. I'm in my fan moment being on the podcast with you. And I honestly, I still feel, I'm not sure how I measure up, but I definitely hope someone hears this and is able to take something from it, and I can provide something for them in their journey. So excited.
Man, I'm pumped. We're going to have a lot of fun today. But for people that don't know you, man, just tell us a little bit about yourself and why did you want to invest in real estate?
Great question. So it's 2025. I like to think I got bit by the real estate bug around 1999, 2000. Coming up on 43 years old. So this was closer to senior in high school, the thrill of watching TV, being up late at night, and just consistently seeing infomercials. Invest in real estate, buy houses, pennies on the dollar, grow your wealth. I've always been a math nerd. I love math. I think it's the universal language. So I believed in the money potential. I believed in compound interest. I never believed you could buy houses without already being an ultra millionaire. So that kind of piqued the interest, more late night TV watching. And yeah, I feel like that's where it began, like believing half of the commercial, not ever paying for the DVDs, the cassette tapes. I'm a little bit older, but just chasing that dream of compound interest and ultimately having wealth of some measure.
Man, that's so good. And I'm so glad you're one of the few people that I've talked to that only pay attention to half the commercials and half the gurus, because everybody just jumps in and they think it's so easy. But you're a great example of how you just took it step by step. And so obviously you went to college, you graduated, you got your full-time job. And am I remember correctly, like you were just saving up money from your full-time job because you knew you were getting towards that first investment? Like, what was your thought process behind it? Like, I knew this is what I'm going for. And I just Like I know at least this is the first step. I might not know every single step, but I know that saving up for it might be the first step. What are your thoughts there?
I would say I grew up primarily with my mother and my younger sister, and having a frugal lifestyle was just what life was. My mother was a elementary school teacher, and I was thinking back. I don't really feel like I realized what money really was until about high school. We have two predominantly middle schools at that time, and we would merge together to form our high school class. And the other middle school that I didn't attend, when we all came together as a group freshman year, it was clear, like, some kids had a little bit more, I would say, a couple more dollar signs on their fabric than I did. And yeah, I just grew up knowing how to stretch a dollar. I like to think that even though growing up I was told no a lot to material items that I wanted, by no means is that a negative, but those are different traits that I carried with me throughout my life. So it was never about, I want to buy houses so I can have the Lamborghini and the wild vacations. I just, I don't know, man. I really enjoyed the math of those commercials. There were, of course, eccentric and, someone was doing wild and crazy things, but it just seemed like a life that like I could do that. And let me make a go at it. So for me, it was all about, I believe this thing can work. I can do it, but houses aren't cheap. So that part of, oh, pennies on the dollar and let me show you how. And I never bought into that. So I just maintained a, a, a focus on living well below my means. Let's save up every penny possible. And eventually we're going to get into this game. And that's been my focus and continues to be my focus.
All right. So you started saving capital for your initial investment. And how much did you have to save up before you were like, okay, I am now ready for my first investment? Did you have a number in mind and you achieved that number? And then you said, hey, let me go jump into it now. What was that like for you entering your first investment?
I'll tell you exactly how it was. There was no number in mind. It was just, I need a lot of money. I never really looked at a sales price. I knew the number was big. So for me, I went to college, and throughout my whole time in college, I had already been bit by the bug in high school. I'm trying not to spend any money. If there's free food to the left and everybody's partying to the right, I'm gonna catch up to y'all later after I go get this free food. I'm not gonna buy the pizza. Me and my roommate would split a $10 pizza. I got five on it. He got five on it. So, and that just carried over. And professionally, from undergrad, I ended up bouncing around a couple of different jobs, ended up joining the military. And by no means am I the poster child for joining the military. It was never a gung-ho, let me save the world. I wanted to do better in my life at that moment. And then I kept in the back of my head, only people I knew with more than one house were military members. And I'd heard their story. And San Antonio is where I'm from. Big city. We're hashtag military city. So I've run into several veterans in active duty. Yeah, I have a house over here from my last duty station. Or, oh yeah, we still have this house over there. And so I'm thinking, okay, I didn't believe the infomercials on pennies on the dollar, but I'm meeting real life people who are telling me they have more than one home, and they were in the military. So I went down, and at that time, I just wanted to go. Professionally, things that weren't working out great. Okay, I can do the military for 20 years, no problem. Roll of the dice, the Navy was the shortest line, so I ended up joining the Navy. Ended up getting stationed in Japan, so I didn't need a lot, couldn't take a lot with me if I wanted to. So again, wasn't trying to save the world, was just determined to buy real estate. And the military, one great thing about it is the income, nothing amazing, but the expenses are drastically lower than any civilian job. So just by being a military member, I no longer had to pay for housing. 99% of the time, didn't have to pay for food. And while my cohorts went on to buy brand new Mustangs and 80-inch TVs, I was invested in myself, and I enjoyed looking at my paycheck, and probably without exaggerating, at least 80% of my paycheck was going to my savings account. I signed up for 5 years, and I just said, I want to keep saving every penny I can until, and it was no number, it was no date. It was just keep saving, keep saving, keep saving. And
Man,
yeah, I'll give it to you.
tell me that's like one of the best stories of delayed gratification, because so many people all talk about, I want this so bad. I want to get all this time back. But are you willing to split that $10 pizza for an extended period of time? Hey, I was on a Domino's 555 deal, right? That's all, right? That's what I used to do.
Real
And
life.
I think people have to understand there's certain sacrifices, especially if you aren't starting from a higher point in life, whether it's socioeconomic status, whatever it is. There are still choices that you can make that you're in control of that dramatically affect your chances. So you've been saving up money and you kept your expenses lowered. Well, when you bought that first property, what was that? Was that a primary residence property? Was that an investment property right away? Tell us a little bit about the first property that you bought.
That's correct. So the actual first property I bought after I got out the Navy, while I was stationed in Japan, my great grandmother passed away, and knew she was, closer towards the end. When I came back from Japan, her house was vacant, and the house there was an empty lot next door. So I immediately bought the lot of land next door. Had a grand idea of I'm gonna fix this house up, and bare minimum, my extended family would have a place to stay, and with the new land next to it, a bigger area kids can play. I think ultimately I bit off more than I can chew. I am 0% handy. And I know we'll touch on that more in the future. But yeah, I ended up buying a vacant piece of land and started use my GI Bill to go to law school. Again, that was all about let me chase income. I never wanted to be an attorney. Now I'm an active attorney, and I am the least, I would say, passionate attorney that I've met, because as soon as the ruling is done, I'm back to Redfin. I'm back to Zillow. I'm looking for another house. But yeah, the first actual, I would say, purchase was a lot of land that I ended up selling during law school. Law school has a definite effect of making you consider the worst case scenario. So the land was in San Antonio. I'm in school in Dallas. All I kept thinking about, I'm taking classes on liability and tort law and all the 7,000 ways someone could get hurt. Combined with me being at least a 4-hour drive away, I ended up selling the land, couldn't take it. It was too much on me mentally to try to figure things out. But yeah, that was about 2013. 2019, I actually bought my primary residence, which was my first official residence dwelling purchase. And that was just primarily moving out of mom's house, trying to first attorney job, getting myself situated, because I figured I needed certain goals hit before I can start investing in real estate. Since then, my mind has changed about that. But the first house was my primary residence, and I'm proud to be on your show and to be able to talk about it, because that house now, I have a great family who's staying in it, and her rent is being subsidized by housing and urban development, more commonly known as
Oh,
Section 8.
that's great. So you bought your first primary residence, and did you buy that primary residence with the intention, having seen some of your former colleagues in the militaries keep those houses, and obviously they might have bought it with a VA loan with a pretty low down payment, but did you buy that property with like, okay, I'm gonna live in this temporarily, and then eventually I'm gonna turn to a rental? Was that sort of your thought process with that end in mind, or what was it?
Not at all. Not at all. I bought my first house. It was 2019. So at this time, I am 37 years old. I have a 3-year-old son, and I was living at home with my mom. And to be honest, professionally, as much as I hate to admit, I've never been good at staying at one job. But I'm a disabled veteran, and my disability paperwork had just went through. I'm not all the way there, but I figured with the amount that they told me I would be getting every month, if I structure my life to live under this number, then I'm fine. And that's exactly what I did. My thoughts was, it's time to move out of mom's house. Let me set a better example for my son, and at the time my girlfriend, who is now my wife. And hey, if the military is going to pay me, $10 a month, for example, then let me structure my life to live under $10 a month. And I went out and found a house where my mortgage, interest, taxes, HOA, everything was under my disability benefit. So I figured my bases are covered. My family has a stable roof, regardless if I have a job. Because quite frankly, I've never been one to hold on to an employee position too long.
Wow, Tommy, that's such a good story, because I really want people to understand everybody's journey is different. And for you to decide whether or not that leap that you're going to make, right? For all the audiences members that are listening right now, for you to make that leap, whatever that leap might be, can you structure your life so that you can live comfortably without financial stress when you make that first leap, because that first leap could be really scary. And especially if we don't have a community around us and we don't have other people doing the thing that we want to do in real estate investing, who do you look towards? So Tomi was such a great example. Delayed gratification, wanted to put an example, found a job, got his life structured around living below his means so that he can take that first foray into real estate investing. This is such a great story. I love this one because it's a perfect blend of everything that everybody should be thinking about so that they don't overextend themselves. And Tomi, so let's talk about when you turn that property into a rental. How did you even know about Section 8? Like, how did you know, like, hey, let me go for a HUD voucher to find a tenant for this property? Tell us a little bit about the research that you did and why you thought that was a good idea.
Okay, so the primary residence was the first property I bought, but it was not the first rental that I actually owned. I ended up buying about two properties after the primary, before the primary became the Section 8 rental. And so the three properties after the primary, I ended up driving around, driving for dollars, noticed a sign that said for sale by owner. I called the sign one day. A man answered the phone, and I remember it being a Sunday, and he said, yeah, that house is for sale. And matter of fact, I have about 26 other houses that I'm working on selling and disposing. Man, the biggest smile on my face appeared. Like, finally, the podcast, that one moment everybody kind of talks about, it happened for me. And I pretty much I told the gentleman, if you really have 26 properties, I would love to shadow you, help you out in whatever way I can. I'm interested in following, doing something similar to what you're doing. So throughout our time together, he had mentioned he used to have several Section 8 homes, and he actually moved away from the business model due to his own different reasons. But for me, I really like the idea of affordable housing. My mother had always taught at lower income schools, and even as an attorney, I feel like professionally it sets me aside. But just my background, I'm not around people who I would say on average have the higher level of education, the degrees, the higher income. My daily life, I run into so many clients who question me even now. Are you sure you're an attorney? And I'm like, yeah, what you mean? And well, I mean, you talk like us, and I do. Like, I just happen to have taken some tests, or have a little gold card, but outside of that, no, I feel more at home in certain areas and in certain groups, and dealing with the Section 8 program, for me, it feels like this is where I belong. It's self-fulfilling. I can be profitable, but also actually be helpful. And yeah, I've just enjoyed it, and I continue to try to do better. And no one kind of showed me specifically what to do, where, why, when. But my first tenant, she's still with me. She likes to consider herself my guinea pig. And I tell her all the time, I hate that name, but that's really what our relationship has been. Like, I'm her guinea pig and she's mine. And so we're constantly trying, okay, does this work? Does this work? Well, what if we do this? And what if we do that? We both approach the program as a team. And sometimes it's a little more difficult working with Section 8 than other times. But overall, I mean, nothing, I don't know. I would say overall, it's a lot of lessons. Things I used to consider a loss or a failure, now I realize it's a lesson. And, if I fill out a form and I get 2 thumbs up, fine. But if I get rejected, and I just fill out the form again and learn from it.
Well, let's talk about that, Tomi. So I want to cover 2 things with you. One is, what were some of the myths that you heard about Section 8 and affordable housing? Because first of all, for you to go down that path, you have to overcome your self-doubts. And it sounds like you had a little bit of background with your mom teaching at the elementary school that helped you go over, okay, these are just people. But what were some of the myths that you heard, and has any of that turned out to be true for the residents that you have in place that might be on a Section 8 voucher?
So I just want to say loud and proud, none of it is true if you don't want it to be true. I'm always networking. I'm in different groups. I like to talk about Section 8. I had to learn that a lot of people with previous experiences, 99.9%, I heard all the war stories. But again, I don't always believe everything that everyone says. And the commonality I found in my experience with a lot of landlords, they were just bad landlords, to be frank. Not that I'm the best, but how can you expect to give someone keys to your house, walk away, come back a year later, and everything be pristine? That doesn't make sense. And for me, I've lived in the dorms in college. I lived in the barracks in the military. I've lived on boats. So I've been in a lot of different living situations and with various levels of supervision. And I feel like I just approached the program differently. But yeah, I heard all of this was broken, the bills was ran up. I know when I was growing up, Section 8 was a side of town. So it's like you say Section 8, oh, well, those houses over there, or and it's a lot of those they people generalizations that I don't know. I got to a point where I'm almost okay now with hearing people's war stories because that just means more opportunities for me. But I will definitely say that I heard all the stories, weeded through, I guess, the facts from the opinions, and I still made the choice to dive in. And the type of person I am when I dive in is it's all the way to the deep end. So that's what I did with
Dude.
the first one, and
Yes.
now we
Yes.
now we successfully. I'm happy to say we just closed on a home in December, and we have
Nice.
a lease that was officially completed January 3rd. So I have two homes now that have Section 8 families in it, and I'm on a mission. So yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
keep going.
I love it. And I don't want people to miss this point that you talked about earlier, how you highlighted that when people talk about the horror stories of Section 8, you hear opportunities. And I think this is why it's so important for everyone to listen to the podcast to just have a different set of lens when you look at a problem. Because whenever you buy a problem, everyone's like, oh, why are they selling? Like, oh, this must be terrible. But if you look at it from a different lens and look at it from a lens of opportunity, then you start to see opportunities that might not be so visible to other folks. Now, Tomi, you talked about the lessons that you learned. What lessons have you learned? And now that you've closed on your second property, what have you applied to it? So tell us a little bit some of the lessons that you learned from your real estate investing career, and how have you changed your approach, if any, to how you're approaching investment properties now?
Oh man, I literally we're at 10 properties. Every deal is different, and I'm proud to say every deal is better, at least through my lens, because I think it was what's her name? Oh, I have the singer's name in my head, but the only thing constant in life is change. I remember hearing that in high school, but she sung the song Brown Skin. Anyway, but going forward,
Nope.
every deal gets better, specifically between the two Section 8 tenants. I will say I got better at doing the paperwork. I got better at being patient. I definitely got better at responding. Even as an attorney throughout my life, people have always commented how quickly I respond. So if the case manager emailed me, "Hey, Tomi, this form isn't right, or you missed this information," within 24 hours, absolutely. But I'm also one. If my phone dings, I'm not gonna. It's a double-edged sword, but I'm not gonna wait till 5 p.m. to talk about money, to talk about a family's future housing. So if I get a ding from the case manager, if I see the ding, I'm dropping what I'm doing. I'm immediately responding, and I definitely feel like that served me well, especially with the Section 8 program. Developing patience. I am not a patient person, but I've had to learn, again, I was in the military, I've had government jobs. There is a certain level of these checks need to be checked off, whether it makes sense or doesn't. But if you're focused on the mission, then it's okay. This might have taken an extra day the first time around. Now I'm anticipating it. I'm responding faster. So that definitely helped. Specifically, I would tell people that are listening to your podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. I'm really proud with this one because through the Facebook groups and so forth, we actually closed on the home. 2 hours later, the prospective tenant who's now lives there, she was viewing the home. And that's because I listed it on the affordablehousing.com for rent. I listed it available on Friday, and I closed on the home on Monday. So that's just a small tidbit. I definitely want to share whatever wisdom I have with your audience, but that's something I don't remember specifically where I got that from, but it worked. So I already had people asking me about the home. I literally used the MLS listing pictures and just repurposed it as an available rental. And I put in the listing, it'll be available on Monday, but I posted it the Friday before. So people were already reaching out to me. And because I had access to the home, I had a video walkthrough ready to go. Anyone who asked, I responded. And the young lady that's now living there, she took it upon herself to honestly come by and look at the house. And I told her, well, she messaged me and she said, "Hey, I just went by the house. I live in the area. Please let me know when we can schedule a walkthrough." And specifically, I do think I don't like to talk in generalities, but I do feel like Section 8 is a different type of administration. And overall, the tenants move a little bit differently than I would say the private paid tenants that I've experienced in the past. So for me, when she messaged me, hey, I already went by to look at the house. I like the area. Before I even agreed to show her the house, that showed me enough initiative. That showed me someone that was actually be willing to get up and do work to find a place to live. And I messaged her right back. I said, actually, how far away are you? I live 15 minutes away. If you give me 15, 20 minutes, I'll be right there. She doubled back. We met, walked her through the home. We started working on the necessary paperwork with Section 8 that day. So I would definitely say it's as in anything in life. When there's a will, there's a way. And I
Wow.
purposefully try to get a little bit better every time.
That is so good. And it's just those little screening tips that you just even mentioned. Like, it's like looking for the initiative. Is that person that's coming to your home, that's going to live in your home, show initiative? Are they working full time? Are they looking to better their lives? Right. Those are the types of personalities that are likely going to have pride and dignity in where they live. And they saw Tomi's house listed right on. And props to you, Tomi, for listing the property before you close. I think I know which podcast you're talking to because I remember talking to him. But that's such a great tip because people forget about holding costs. When you buy a property, you're paying interest expenses on that property right away. So if you don't start working right away on filling that home, I mean, you're just incurring expenses and that dramatically decreases your cash and cash return. So don't sit on properties. Don't sit on your business. And most important, don't sit on your messages. That's so good, Tomi. If you have time right now and you're just getting started, if you're the person that responds to text messages in 10, 15 minutes or less, always, that will set you apart than so many people because we all have friends, and I'm guilty of this right now because I get so many messages. We don't respond right away most of the time because we're busy. But if they know that you're responsive, they think that that automatically attributes to caring. And that's so, so important because when people know that you care, they try to help you out at the same time. So tell me, we just talked about a little bit about the pre-screen, talked about a little bit about the paperwork. What was the inspection like? Sometimes we hear a lot about horror stories about the inspection. What was that like? Did you fail anything during inspection? And what have you learned so that we can share that with the audience so that they can look out for any potential pitfalls for their properties?
Absolutely. So we've successfully completed 2 home inspections. The first tenant was also a unique situation. She had won the lottery. I'm not sure if every housing area does a lottery system, but she actually moved from Lubbock, Texas, a couple hours north. She won the lottery, which basically means her voucher was initiated immediately instead of being on. They tell me now it's a 2 to 3 year wait period. And in my local housing area, so many selected few kind of Willy Wonka, their golden ticket, they're called up, ready to go. So with her, she moved in as a private pay because her voucher didn't actually get activated until months later. And her and I worked that out. And again, I would say going back to nuggets, I would like to leave those future landlords of Section 8 that are come before me or those that get back into the game. It's a people business. I've had bad experiences, yes, but I sit here with the biggest smile on my face because I enjoy this. I'm passionate about it. And for those that specifically are on the edge, at least on the fence about Section 8, look, people are people. Where their money comes from is no guarantee that they won't break, they won't damage, they won't be people. For me, especially being someone now, 5 years since living through COVID, I go to sleep the day before the first of the month. I wake up and about 80% of my rent is already there. And it's a much easier conversation now with my first tenant. We've done a rental increase, which by the way, 0% affects the tenant. I actually was able to get my tenant's portion reduced $15 while getting the rent increased. We can get into that later. But there's a lot of, I would say, benefits to the program, and to each his own. But I feel like, again, this is a way that I found to be profitable, and also like that inner feeling of I did good, regardless of what happens with the money. Like it went to serve a purpose. Getting,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
this is good, Tommy, because I went through the same situation where I pre-leased the one of my homes to a tenant before the Section 8 voucher got issued. And my reason for that was I wanted the home to be occupied so it lowers the chances of some crime might be happening on a property, right? Don't want that to happen. when you did that with your first tenant, how did you arrange that? Did she move in and then the inspection took place? What was the sequence of that arrangement? What did that look like?
Yes. So to be 100% transparent, she told me she sold her house in Lubbock. This is how dedicated she was, and I saw so much of me in her. When I met her, she had two children. She won the lottery. She always wanted to move to San Antonio. She said she sold her house in Lubbock once she won the lottery. She came down to San Antonio. I was extremely nervous to let someone in the house with the pending voucher. I, again, I heard bad stories. So I purposefully, I've told her this, and I'm going to share the link, and she'll hear about this, and we'll laugh about this later. But I purposefully gave her every reason to walk away. I asked her I said, I know your voucher is going to hopefully go through, but until it does, for me as a business, I still have to treat you like a private pay tenant, meaning I need to see that you make three times the income. She did not have three times the income. So I was like, okay, well, again, I pivot. If there's a problem, we're going to solve it if you're willing to work with me. I said, well, I would need 3 months deposit up front because I need a regular security deposit. And then also, let's say the voucher takes a month or two to kick in. I need something to make myself feel good. And in real life, as an attorney, I also know how much it might be to evict someone. So I figure at least if I build in some type of cushion, then I can, feel better about this. She said, cool, no problem. We discussed her credit score. She knew her credit score was a little lower than ideal. I really respected her because she had a comeback just like I have a comeback. So when people tell me no, well, what if I try this? What if I try that? She had every rebuttal possible. She was prepared. And then honestly, at the end of the day, it just came down to she made me feel good on the inside. I felt that I could trust this person. And then again, I do things a little bit differently, and I have no problem with sharing my philosophy. I believe that we all need more help than what we admit. For some reason, a lot of us think, and I've been guilty too. You think you're 18, you're grown, you got it figured out. But I tell my tenants first, straight up, look, I am not a professional landlord. I do want to get better, and I refuse to be a slumlord. But going along with that is I'm going to make mistakes. And I ask your grace and patience, just like when you make mistakes, I'm gonna be graceful and patient with you. But there's certain things that have to happen. So I know, for example, with me, I don't see a reason why. Let me give you the keys and I'll come back in a year. I communicate with my tenants constantly. I check on them and I let them know that I'm coming by. And then I also don't expect certain people to do certain things. I mean, at the time, she's a woman with two kids, I believe, under 7. I'm not expecting her to change the air filters. Like, that's dumb. But then I hear a lot of landlords like, oh, well, people didn't do this. They didn't do the preventative maintenance. Number one, no tenant is going to love your property like you do. And number two, I don't feel like that's her job. I tell her and I tell all my tenants, your job is to communicate with me and don't tear my house up. Everything else we can fix and take care of. And my second tenant in particular, she's been a little bit harder she has some baggage and some former landlord issues that we're getting over. But I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. But as long as we can communicate like adults, I feel like we can figure out every problem. And again, with housing as our financial backing, the money will take care of itself. Let's make sure that the toilet doesn't leak. I'm not worried about, it's an HOA. Am I going to require a mother with 3 kids to cut the grass? Absolutely not. I worked out a deal with the local landscaper. Hey, you cut all the yards. So then when the Section 8 money comes in, everybody take what they need to take to maintain the house. And then we can move on to the next one. So that's kind of been my philosophy.
Man, I love all the elements of keeping it a people business. Man, it's so important. Sometimes people forget, if you just treat people with dignity and respect, I mean, chances are they're gonna treat you the same way, if not better. And so, Tomi, we talked a lot about the pre-screening process and how you were flexible around it, which is great. I absolutely love that. You just mentioned that you went through a rent increase with the housing authority. What does that process entail to increase your rents? And I just want to make sure I hammer home for folks, right? Section 8 tenants, they pay a certain percentage of the income. Even if you raise rents as a landlord, their portion, the tenant's portion of their rent, is dependent on their income. So even if you raise their money, but their income went down, they're going to pay lower even though you raised your rent. So I want to make sure people are super clear about that before they're like, oh, there's a hungry landlord trying to raise rents. We're raising rents to the amount that we are entitled to, as long as they're reasonable based on the market. So what was that rental increase process like? Was it difficult? Was there a lot of paperwork? How did you feel about it?
Well, Kent, first off, I want to say that people should be happy when a landlord raises rents and actually uses the money to do what needs to be done. I do feel like there is that sentiment of, oh, you're being greedy. A lot of landlords kick back with, oh, well, insurance costs and things of that nature went up. I'll tell my tenants flat out, don't mention my name in a slumlord conversation. But because of that, rents do need to go up because I've had to replace toilets and that toilet was replaced within 24 hours. Or so and so, this was cracked or needs to be fixed. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. And because I have the financial means, let me get that fixed. So getting back to the rental increase, I've successfully done one. Kent, it was smooth paperwork. Now, mind you, my background again, I keep mentioning it just because I feel like I'm uniquely positioned in this game. Being in the military, we are taught follow directions. You give me a good checklist, I can take over the world. Don't ask me to start from step one, but if you line out step 1 through 10, professionally, I was an aviation electrician. So I was working on F-18 wiring systems, complex weaponry, but it was all a checklist. Even our pilots, 7,000 buttons, they have a checklist. Section 8 also has checklists. So, and a form bank. So we went through the form bank. I learned that at least in San Antonio, you're able to put in for a rental increase 60 days before the effective date. I know how to count, and I also learned dateandtime.com. That's another tip. So I put in her lease is over March 1st. 60 days prior, I calendared and I told my tenant, hey, before this date, 60 days before March 1st, we need to put in for a rental increase. We went through the questions, and I'm happy you hammered. I didn't even understand. The tenant's portion is based on her income. It's not based on what the prevailing rent is. So I filled out the form. I went to HUD, the national website where they talk about how much the rent in your area is. And I submitted the increase in line with those numbers. All the tenant has to do is sign the bottom, which honestly, I don't even know why they require the tenant to do that, but they did. My tenant signed the bottom. We submitted the form. Literally within 4 business days, they responded to me and said, yes, this will be effective March 1st. And they also tell you the tenant portion. My tenant's portion. So I'm not sure if your audience is ready for this one because I think this is dope myself. So the tenant rent year from year went from the overall rent year from year went from $19.51 per month to $22.80 per month. That's a 16% increase. No civilian landlord is getting a year over year increase of 16% without, installing double doors, marble floors. That's that little Texas for you. But no one's getting a 16% year over year increase. I've heard 5, 6, 7, lucky to get 10. Not only did I get a 16% year over year increase, my tenant's monthly portion went down $15 a month. Because again, being a nerd and reading through the forums, I learned if the tenant's income for any reason it drops, that's another form. My tenant recently had a child, and throughout those weeks where she wasn't working, she wasn't getting income. So we submitted that form as an income reconsideration. I don't remember the exact name of the form, but combined me asking for a rental increase and also proving to Section 8 that my tenant wasn't making as much money as she previously was. 16% year over year increase. My tenant's portion went down $15, and wow, we're both thrilled.
I love that, man. It's such a good story. So when you got that rent increase, what did you as a landlord had to provide? Did you have to play the coordinator role? Did you have to go to the tenant and say, hey, I need your income here. I need your documents, pay stubs, whatever that may be. And then did you have to go and get comps or comparable properties for market rents, or what did you have to do specifically?
So comps can be used. With this one, I didn't have to do any of that, Kent. I literally filled out the form. And another tip for those in the know, because I definitely respect you and your viewers. This isn't the average show. I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I love how niched you are. Like you're in affordable housing. I'm still taking notes from episodes prior, but I read on the HUD website, everything is by zip codes and bedrooms. So for example, if in this area code, it says a 3-bedroom, Section 8 will pay up to $1,800 a month. That's in the charts. But in the fine print, it says they can pay up to 10% over what's in that chart. Literally, I saw the HUD number for my zip code based on bedroom count. I multiplied that number by 1.1 and I rounded down. And then I asked, so it was about $5 off. So I figured, let me get as much within the limit that the first person seeing this form can sign it off. So then I don't have to provide extra comps and things of that nature. I rounded down, the increase was approved. And now when I look on redfin.com, out of what I would consider comparable houses, I think there are about 70 or so in the zip code. The rent I'm getting starting March 1st is top to bottom is fifth highest. So that's another misconception that I heard from a lot of people who had been in the game before me, was that Section 8, it's dependable. Number one, people are going to tear up your house. And number two, there's no way that you're going to be as profitable as you want to be. And to be frank, I do want to be profitable. I want to be a great landlord. And part of that is, the more money that we're able to bring in, not only can I keep up and maintain the home, but then that's money that some portion can be set aside to buy another home and to move on to other ventures. So that's exactly what I did. I multiplied the rent times 1.1, rounded down, submitted the request. That was approved. And as far as getting the tenant section reduced, that did come with some bank form verifications. I believe she had to show a couple of most recent pay stubs and so forth. But it was a pretty seamless process.
Wow. And I just loved how you just pulled back the curtains on that rent increase process. So people, if you're listening right now, I mean, that wasn't rocket science. Is there a little bit of work? Yeah, but no matter what you do in life, you got to solve some problems if you want to generate revenue. You just got to pick what type of problems you want to solve and who do you want to help. In this case, we're helping great families get into a beautiful home. And that's so good. And you're able to turn a profit. So you increase your rents to 2,200, 2,261 or 81. Did I catch that correctly?
2,280. We started at 1951 and we increased to 2,280. Yes.
Great. And what does your PITI look like on that property now?
So my PITI, we just got adjusted escrow analysis. Right now it's at 2085.
Got it.
But
so you're still
I will say I'm still able to cash flow. But again, that house wasn't meant to be a rental. That house was my primary house. My mom, number one, it was time to leave mom's house. And number two, that house was close to my job and I could make my payments with my disability check. So this is all happenstance and I consider myself fortunate and blessed. But the cash flow to me is nothing to be amazing.
But I'm assuming your house appreciated over the last couple of years, right?
Now that it has.
Let's talk about that. What do you think it's worth? How much did you buy it for, and what do you think it's worth now?
Okay, so getting down to the nuts and bolts, I did use my VA loan, so I'm also in it for 0%, which I definitely feel like cash on cash return numbers are definitely, the smaller your denominator, the better. So 0% into the home. The home was originally listed at $254. We ended up closing at $245. This was in December of 2019. And right now, if I wanted to get it off my hands immediately, I think I could get $325. COVID, for what good and what bad, a lot of that is COVID appreciation. But again, this was my house. This wasn't me starting investing. I started investing in 2020. This just happened to be, as I kept learning and reading, I can use my VA loan more than once. Let's run it. So that's what we ended up doing.
And I don't want you to take away credit from yourself, man, because look, you made a decision to purchase a home, and we can never predict what appreciation or where appreciation is going to go. But talk about building wealth. I mean, you built over almost 80 grand of equity in this property. So who cares about $200 of cash flow a month? It's nice. I think it's really nice. But I think that's why for everybody who's listening, you have to understand, what is your portfolio strategy? Like, what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking to build some cash flow? Are you looking to build appreciation? Because that's where a lot of the wealth is created. But you might decide, hey, maybe I want to go 60-40, 50-50. Maybe I got some stocks. This is why this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call. This is not legal advice. I know Tomi's an attorney.
Definitely not.
Right?
This is not a legal relationship.
But this is why I think for you out there that's listening right now, that's on the fence, sometimes taking a first step, even if it's buying your primary home, that might set you up for something that you cannot see right now. And I wanted Tomi to come on the show to share with you what exactly happened to him. Because your first investment or your first property purchase, it might not be an investment property. It might be your primary residence. But you can't predict what happens 5-7 years from now. You can't predict what you're going to listen or hear on a podcast 5-7 years from now that triggers you to say, oh, someone listening to this podcast today 5 years from now is like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened to me. This is what this guy told me did. Why do I not do that? And that's all it takes. And if Tomi could just inspire one of you guys all that's listening today to follow his footsteps and just to be brave enough to structure your life below your means, delay gratification, but be confident enough to take that first leap, even though it might not make you a billionaire, it could still be the first step that reveals so many more steps to you. I mean, Tomi, I think you must feel the same way. You must be so glad and so grateful that you made the first purchase, right?
I 100% am. And to continue on that note, Kent, I will say I read Rich Dad Poor Dad probably when I was about 22. So after I graduated college, I literally went off to college, had worked at Sonic all summer. $500 took me from San Antonio to Florida, Tallahassee, and I figured it out. So when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was cool. It wasn't life changing like I hear a lot of people say. But for those that do feel like, oh, the Purple Bible changed everything, for me, the main difference I just wanted to say, Robert talks about your primary residence not being an asset. I 0% subscribe to that. I think it can be, for a lot of us, it should be, but it definitely, you change. I feel like as bashful as I am and humbled to be on your podcast, because I still have great aspirations and I'm nowhere near. The person who owns one home is a lot closer to the person who owns 500 than they are to the person who owns zero. Like getting in the game, getting started. Yes, I've had a refrigerator stolen. I've had water pipes break. No, there's never been a 3 o'clock in the morning toilet phone call. But instead of, I had this transition from trying to tell people, oh no, this is kind of working, to focus on making it work. You change exponentially, man. And the effect that you're able to have in other people's lives. Like my wife and I, we were hoping to buy one house a year. Here it is. I've been focused about 5 years, and right now we're at 10 properties, and trying to do more and do better every time. So I would definitely say, if you're scared, I am too. Every deal is nervousness. You get over it and you find friends and you listen to great podcasts, and specifically in affordable housing. If this is tickling any interest, I'm gonna drop Kent will definitely have my phone number and email. We need to do this. There's this is beyond a want. There's a need for this, and us individuals, we can move faster. Like the apartment complex that's going to be built is going to take 2 years, but with some thought, I can buy a single family house and change one family's life before that apartment complex can change 100. So,
and this is why I brought Tomi on a podcast. Like, if you weren't inspired or you feel like you couldn't do it, Tomi is a great example of how anybody from any background can put the work in and start taking those small steps towards achieving whatever goal you want. If that's financial freedom, freedom of time, freedom of choice, whatever you want to pursue, that's all within your grasp. And you can learn from someone like Tomi and just his journey and how he's just structured his life and how he tried to continuously stay consistent towards it. Whether that's doing your full-time job, finishing a case, and then going on Redfin right away, looking for the next opportunity. I mean, sometimes it's just simple as that. It's just a little bit of consistency. So Tomi, let me ask you another thing. What is there a skill or an area of expertise that you wish you would have started learning first to make your investment career a little bit easier? I know you weren't prepared for this question, but I'm just really curious, like looking back now when you reflect, like what do you think you would have liked to learn first when you got started?
oh man, you're gonna have to stop me, because I'm not one of the guys to say that I have no regrets. And do I dwell on things? No, but definitely things that I wish, 40-year-old me talking to 20-year-old me. I became an attorney because I was chasing income. I definitely feel like I would have been better served to sweep floors in a brokerage, being close to real estate, versus a total different area just to make the money. but again, I think some of that comes with experience and patience. But I definitely feel like I knew I wanted to do this thing. So instead of jumping to the military, jumping to law school, like I feel like if I would have known or been exposed to those actually doing it, I would have rather take out trash for a successful investor versus going to law school. And that sounds funny, but that's how I feel on that end. As far as special skills and things like that, I was always told when I was younger that I wasn't patient. If I wanted something, I wanted it now. I had no problem thinking about it and coming up with a plan, but I was just not a patient person. Real estate is absolutely a get rich slow game. I was never, oh, I need the Lambo, I need the vacation on the beach and things of that nature. But you do get punched in the mouth. And those stories, we don't brag and tell each other about, the bad things that happen, but they do. They happen. And from what I hear, they happen to the person buying their 1000th property, just like they happen to the person buying their first property. But there's safeguards that you do your best you can, and then you just take your punch and keep rolling. And for me, I've transitioned from I took a L to no, I took that L, but that L isn't a loss. That L is a lesson. I'm gonna reach out there and grab it. I'll own it when I mess up, so then I don't make that mistake again. And again, it's honestly a little frustrating trying to keep up with everything, but every deal gets better. Every deal you learn, you don't need all the money that you thought you needed. There's no replacement for actually communicating well with others. And for me, there's a personal study piece that I have no problem sitting down and reading a book on a subject that I'm passionate about. And real estate is that type subject. And when we talk about ROI, it's usually cash. Man, getting in these rooms, networking with others, I didn't realize how valuable that was until recently. So those are some of the pieces that I wish a younger me had known. And then I hope that I can impart to whoever's next, because it's important and it's so possible. Like growing up, like no one barely had one house. Like I didn't even know renting houses was real until I'm in my mid 20s. Because to me, if you rented something, you rented an apartment complex. Like that's just what I saw. But being exposed to different things, it's like, these are the things that I'm trying to do with my son now. Like, yeah, maybe I can't
Yes.
afford that house, but let's go play at that park over there so we can bump and rub shoulders and talk about things and have conversations instead of where we're at, but focus more so on where we're going.
Man, that is so good. And I know our kids one day will listen to this podcast. And I mean, I tell my wife and my daughter when she's old enough, she's 3, just like when you moved out with your son. It's if you want to learn something and your dad or mom isn't good at the thing that you want to do, I'm literally going to tell them, don't listen to my advice. Go get yourself in the room with somebody that's already doing the thing that you want to do, because they're going to be able to tell you all the trials and tribulations that they went through, right? If you want to learn about real estate, yeah, I can tell you why I have to scope every sewer drain that I look into, because it costs you $7,000. You don't get it right the first time. I'll tell you why I had to put a cage on my HVAC, because it got stolen and cost me $5,000 to replace. And these are the lessons that only folks that have been through it can share with you. And you just raised such a good point. It's about getting in the rooms with the right people and learning from them, and just learning. Sometimes we talk about this concept of adding value. How do you bring value to people? How do you bring value to the relationship? And everybody's going to be a little bit different. It's on you to figure out, hey, what are the skills that I have right now? Right? You might be an accounting major, so you might be really good with numbers. Maybe you go underwrite deals for everybody and save them some time. Maybe you're an attorney and you can review some documents for someone that's really, I mean, there's so many different ways. It's on you to find what gives you strength, gives you energy, that can allow you to put the best version of yourself forward for these rooms that you want to get into. And I think that is just so powerful. So, man, Tom, this has been such a good conversation, man. I know we're getting to the end, but I got to ask you this question. This is a question that I ask everybody on a podcast. And the question is, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, is just so hard to solve for?
Okay, Kent. Now, I told you when we got started, this is the question I've been waiting for. So with a smile on my face, here's my answer. I think we all as a society need to get back to the need, NEED. I feel like throughout life, I've learned Maslow's triangle of human needs. One of them is the basic shelter. I feel like if we get back to housing as a need, affordable housing will be well on its way to being solved. So, for example, do I enjoy having two bathrooms with my, now I have a daughter, so it's a family of four. Is it more convenient that we have two bathrooms? Absolutely. Especially when the girls can go to their side, or, we split it up, the kids go to their side. But do we need two bathrooms? We don't. I think one bathroom is sufficient for most families. I think if we get back to, I heard another podcast talking about square footage, where 30, 40, 50 years ago, the average square foot per person was a lot smaller than what it is now. So is it nice to say, hey, I live in a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 square foot home? If you can afford that, absolutely, have fun. But don't tell me I need a 4,000 square foot home. No, you need a roof. You need indoor plumbing. We don't need a lot of the things that I feel like we put into housing. And because of that, number one, housing is not affordable. And number two, I feel like no matter what situation I'm in and I've been in, to be frank, I've been homeless. I've had issues adjusting back to society. I've been the broke college student. Even now as an attorney, I think a lot of people assume every attorney is making mega bucks, and that's just not true. But based on where you are at, it's easier to look at what I've been through and what would I have wished someone help provide. And I love how you end every podcast. You thank guests and thanks for helping out. And, I remember being in that situation of needing, my family needing a place to stay. So that's kind of I feel like that word need, like it's a different way you approach someone, even if it's, hey, are you hungry? Absolutely. Well, here, have this cheeseburger, but don't complain to me that it doesn't have bacon on it. And I feel like when it comes to housing, if we get down to the basics of what do we need, there need to be way more 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. There need to be way more, in my opinion, I'm really getting into manufactured housing, just on the price per unit. Do we need to be protected from wind, rain, have a sustainable living situation? Absolutely. Does everybody need solar panels? Does, so there are a lot of different things that I think we do to upgrade our life, and that's awesome. But I think there's unfortunately a large percentage of our population that is struggling with the need of housing. And if we focus on what does our fellow mankind need, then it makes it easier to say, hey, I'll donate $10 so you have a warm place to sleep at night. And if that warm place only has one bathroom and you have 50 kids, look, what was in your body is now in the sewer, and that's been taken care of. Do you need 3, 4, 5 bedrooms? Do you need to have a red oak door? Like, if we get down to the needs, I feel like that will help with our focus and take care of affordable housing.
Man, that is such a good answer. And Tomi, I'm so glad you came on the podcast today. And I'm so grateful again for people like you, because without people like you, I would have never had the home I grew up in. My mom would have never had the apartment that she moved into, because frankly, we needed it. We had 9 people to a 2-bedroom apartment, rats, cockroaches, you name it. And that 2-bedroom apartment that we moved into, I mean, I lived in there for 25 plus years of my life. I lived in a bunk bed with my older brother, and it was more than we needed. And that roof over our heads made the foundation that is so important for my upbringing. And frankly, it's a full circle moment for me to come back on a podcast and start a podcast to meet amazing friends like yourself that is so willing to come on, be vulnerable, and share some of the mistakes that you've made so that other people can learn from you. And I am so confident that your kids are going to listen to this podcast one day and just be so freaking proud of dad. That is the best feeling I can ever offer you as another fellow dad. And the lessons that you have passed on today to the community, I know my daughter's going to watch this one day. So I truly, truly thank you, man. Tell me, for people that want to talk to you or learn more about you, man, where can they find you?
Well, I definitely, I hope people do. Like, I sincerely, if you're hearing my voice right now, reach out to me. I've told Kent, I found his podcast about 3-4 months ago. I listened to everything on 2x speed, so I think I've went through most of the catalog. I reach out to everybody who drops a phone number and email. I want to be a conduit. If you feel like you can help me, reach out. If you feel like I can help you, let me know. My cell phone number is 210-538-4760. I gave Kent my email address, so hopefully email me. Take a chance. Give me some time to respond because I know Kent has an amazing reach, and I definitely hope that I can do whatever little part that I can play. But please reach out. I feel like this podcast particularly is about doing great work, and more people need to be involved. More people need to take it as their responsibility. And honestly, I didn't get to say the second part for me on affordable housing. There's a group effort that I feel like needs to take place. I'm totally down to work with others because at a certain point, it's what are you leaving behind? And at a base level of my kids, my wife, we're taken care of, like that's when I can take the first breath. But the second real feeling of relaxation comes from going hard. And I enjoy going hard, and I've talked to Kent about this. I don't feel like staying in single family is where I need to be. I feel like I need to take my talents and go into commercial and provide more because the need is there. Specifically, just to continue, Kent, one more minute. In San Antonio, we have landlord meetings with Section 8, and my city is I think about the seventh largest. They say Section 8 has a waiting list of 17,000 families. There are currently 8,000 active vouchers in place. So for every one family, there's two families waiting for a place to stay. And unfortunately, like between having listings and hearing so many stories, man, is it fun to get on podcasts and talk with others about things that we're able to accomplish? Absolutely. But there's a heart part of it that's like, if I can figure out a way to find 5 more houses, if I can figure out a better contract language so I can get 10, 15 better financing, those are things that I put on my back that I need to figure out because I know that there are several families that will, benefit.
Man, that is so good, Tomi. And I can't wait to bring you back on the podcast, maybe in a couple months, a year, and just talk about how much your portfolio has grown. We can talk about whether or not you've gone down the path of heavier renovations, because I know some of the properties you buy are a little bit more turnkey. But it's gonna be amazing to watch your journey. It's gonna be amazing to watch your growth. And I can't wait, man. I really can't wait. And for those of you that listen to the podcast today, please, please, please share this episode with a family or friend, because just like how Tomi talked about, hey, if he can just get 5 more homes, well, he can give you the information that might help you make the decision to just get your first or your 5th. And that is how we collectively make an impact. So, Tomi, thank you again so much for coming on the podcast. Everyone, please make sure you reach out to him, talk to him, especially if you're in San Antonio. Reach out to the guy. Please, please, please.
Please.
All right, Tomi. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much again for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Ken. I appreciate it.
All right. And